Welcome back to page 121. Today we're going to take a look at the AD&D Player's Handbook from 1978 by TSR. Why would I bother looking at this? Well, for one thing, I'm profiling all the books that made up the AD&D system, and this is just the next one on the list. The other thing is there's some goodies in here that I had forgotten about, so rereading it from time to time has actually been useful to me, and I just thought I'd kind of share some of my insights in that regard. I'm not pretending to know more about this book than anybody out there. I want to take a look at it. It's one of my favorite books that I've ever bought in my life. $12 well spent. So today on page 121, the AD&D Player's Handbook. The Player's Handbook. Why in the heck would I do a video featuring this? Well, only because it's one of the most important books in the game. This book was published by TSR in 1978. It's the second of the AD&D books, and it has most of what you need to be a player. You'll notice I said most. There are some things in here that build on it, but are further built on in the Dungeon Master Guide, which came out in '79. I'm going to take a look at the inside of the book, and I'm going to try to go to some of the things that maybe people don't realize is in here, and maybe that would be why this book would be a little bit beyond the basic book that you need. We all use the Player's Handbook. If you play AD&D, you use the Player's Handbook on a regular basis. Of course, it's at your table. It's one of the core rule books. But there's some goodies in here that maybe you'd forgotten about, so we're going to take a look at it. The Player's Handbook from 1978. 12 of the best dollars I ever spent. We're going to go take a look. There's my Pegasus stamp. I belonged to a club years ago in the early to mid 80s, and among other things at the club, there was a little bit of a problem with book theft. So I DM'd at the club regularly, so they asked that all the DMs at least put some kind of mark inside their books so that they would always know it was their book and that nobody was trying to make off with it. I didn't really think it was needed to be done, but I did comply as I was one of the leaders of the club. I agreed, so I've stamped a lot of my oldest books with this Pegasus. So this book's actually in really good shape considering it's been on my table for 41 years. So we've got the table of contents. There's the foreword by Mike Carr. He was the TSR Games and Rules editor. And then what it is. And here we go. Character abilities. This is where everybody starts. You have the various, or the way to roll your character. And then the Dungeon Master Guide gave us a couple of different alternate ways to use. But these pages get used a lot as far as your strength table is concerned. When you're going here, I'll go first to strength table 1, which is the maximum strength possible for a female elf, maximum strength possible female dwarf. We took those out. We didn't feel that it was fair. Female players are rare enough in D&D without penalizing them for their gender. I've only had one or two times that a male player has played a female character. But again, why penalize them for their role-playing choices? So we took the rules out, limiting the strength by gender. We also took the rules out, limiting strength by race. So for us, it's possible to have an elf with an 1895 strength. He's just an elf who works out a lot. And then you get down to the ability adjustments here for the strength here. And then you have the important things, the plus to hit, plus to damage. The extra weight allowance, this would be an extra 200 pounds for an 1891 and 99 strength. Your ability to open doors, 1 to 4 on a 6-sider, and then the 1 if it's a reinforced or stone door, and then bend bars, lift gates. These are all old stats that were important in the original AD&D game, and are still important in the game I play because I still play First Edition. Coming here, you've got your intelligence table. We do hold to these various intelligences, except where it has minimum intelligence for a halfling or maximum intelligence for a half-orc. We took all those out. There's no such thing as a min or a max. You are who you are. Your ability for MUs to know spells, we do use that quite a bit. 75% chance. There's your minimum, maximum number per level. And the one thing we did do, and I think a lot of games have done this, is the wisdom bonuses here. And again, we took out the race changes. But more importantly on this table, any of the bonuses here based on wisdom, we moved over here. You also, if you were a magic user and you were a magic user with a 17 intelligence, you would gain 2 bonus first, 2 bonus second, and 1 bonus third level spell as you became eligible to cast those levels of spells. We just felt that it was a fairer way to keep MUs alive. An MU with an 18 intelligence starting out in our campaign is going to start out with 3 first level spells. That keeps them alive a lot longer. I've done a video on that. It's an old video. It's one of my earliest ones where I talk about helping out magic users, and that's some of the rules I talk about in there. We go to Dexterity, and again, the min-maxes for race, gender, anything like that we have removed. And then we go to Constitution. Again, min-max are gone. Before I go away from Dex, here's all the thief bonuses. Again, this book gets used every single time I DM. Charisma table. Again, we remove min and max. Well, not the min if it's a character class requirement. So for a paladin or a druid who has to have a minimum X, those still stand. We just took them out mostly for races, or if there was an arbitrary reason, it was for some character class. So here we go. Here's some more stuff on the character races. The dwarves, the gnomes. We play these pretty much as written, except half-orcs. We don't allow level limits. If you have an elf wizard, I think they're limited to 7th level. And I say I think because I don't use that table anymore, and I haven't in years. So let's see. Magic user, 11th level. No, we took that out. That makes no sense. Why would you stop at 11th level? How would you have all these wondrous elven magics of old if all the MUs had to stop at that level? So all the various races that are found in here, the hit dice, and then we go to the character classes. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the character classes simply because anybody who's played AD&D knows this section really well. Great piece of art. Love that. And we're coming along. We do allow assassins in our campaign. Always have. My most successful character is a half-elf assassin. He is 15th level now, grandfather of assassins, in one of the cities in our game. The monk, we don't use this monk anymore. We use the monk from Oriental Adventures and have since that was published in 85. It's just a better monk. And then here we go, characters, multi-classes and dual-class characters. Rules are called out here. It's amazing how many people do get confused on that. Multi-class is if you're demi-human, dual-class is if you're human. Easiest way to remember that is just humans can never multi-class. They can only dual-class. One of my more successful characters, I had be a ranger up till 5th level, and then I had dropped him down to that 1st level MU and had him level up his MU from that point on. I haven't played him in a long time, but he's around 17th level MU, 5th level ranger. Alignment. Yes, we use alignment in our campaign, and I enforce alignment. In my opinion, alignment saved this game. In D&D, there really wasn't a lot of emphasis on alignment. We didn't use it much, and we had a lot of games devolve into people fighting over treasure. Because of that, we put alignment in when AD&D came out, and we've used it since. Character languages, we do use the languages. We don't do a ton with alignment tongues. Those are more brought out in the DMG. Those are kind of silly to me. The weapons table is very useful. The weapon speed, or the armor class adjustments, we've never used. Henchman, time and distance, and now we get to all the spells. The spells are the meat of this book, and they're fun. As anyone who's played first edition knows, it is a little frustrating because if an MU spell is the same as a cleric spell, they refer you to the cleric spell for most of the details. So you do a lot of page flipping in these books because of that. It was to save on printing the same thing 2 times, therefore increasing the size of the book. But it still makes this book a little tough to work with. It did take some getting used to because everything is by level and then alphabetized. I like that because that's how I learned this game. But I absolutely understand doing it the other way. The other way, if you just remember Fireball, you don't have to remember Fireball is a 3rd level MU spell. You just look up F for Fireball. So I get why it's done differently. So we go up to Cleric. Here's the Druid. I'm going to just blow through this. Magic user. and illusionists. We do actually have a couple of functioning illusionists in our campaign, which I realize is pretty rare. And then we come to spellcasting itself. Scroll spells, information is brought out here. Not a ton here. There's more in other sources. Dragon Magazine and the Wizard Spell Compendium brings out more on that. But now we go into the adventure, Encumbrance. We're guilty of kind of hand-waving encumbrance. I don't let anybody walk around with 10 swords, but I'm not going to bog the game down. As I've said before, these are adult people with full-time jobs and kids who are carving out a little bit of time. I'm not going to sit there and sweat them because they're carrying 5 pounds of stuff over their encumbrance level. Here we have lighting conditions in the dungeon using, I always love this little illustration. The guy's paying out some string and the troll's just winding it up behind him. Infravision and Ultravision. We use Ultravision, kind of what we have used it. What is now Dark Vision in 3rd edition. I'm not sure if Dark Vision carried over to 5th or not, but we use Ultravision as Dark Vision. It works in the dungeon and allows you to see details in the dark. Traps and tricks and encounters. Some good tips back here. This area doesn't get read a lot, I'm sure. I know I didn't read it much until the day I sat down and made myself read this entire book cover to cover. I've actually done that, I think, 3 times now over the last 41 years, where I've read everything in the book. That was very eye-opening. There was some stuff in spells that I, quote, knew, unquote, that turned out I was playing maybe a little wrong, or maybe I could have done a little differently. So it was a very worthwhile endeavor, and that's one I do repeat now and again. I stop here because I love that magic mouth. Here's what makes a successful adventure. Psionics. We threw these out of our campaign in 81 and never looked back. I never felt psionics felt fit in D&D. We threw them out. The Bards. Yeah, we use this Bard class. I know people grumble about Bards a lot. We actually have 2 functioning in our campaign right now, and they're very old characters, and they came up the legitimate Bard way. So it can be done. I've seen it done successfully. One of the characters is mine, so I've done it successfully. Was mine. I've actually since let my youngest son take that character over because I really had no intention of playing him again, and he's done quite well with him. I had named him originally Billy Shears for the Beatles song Sgt. Pepper album, the song off the Beatles, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. He has changed his name to Gellar from the Gord the Rogue books. Okay, here we go. Character alignment graph. This just gives a good illustration of how your alignments are and behave. And here's the first look at the cosmology of D&D. This confused me when I read it because I had no background or anything like this. I've since gone back, and I appreciate that this was a challenge to come up with, and just kind of sticking it as an appendix in this book. I like the cosmology in AD&D. And then, of course, the Player's Handbook reference sheets. And here we go. Here's your costs for everything. Gets referenced all the time. And then, of course, weapon damage. And then some charts. Here's some more stuff you can buy from TSR back in 1978. A Gen Con plug, and we're out. I take a look at this not to say, it was 128 pages, by the way. I take a look at this today not to say that I know anything you don't. I don't. You've read the book. You understand it. You know your campaign. I simply point out that this book has all the core stuff you need to be a player in this game. You don't need the DMG as long as your DM has it. The Player's Handbook has everything you need to get you moving. But there's a bunch of stuff in those pages that you've read, and you know that if you reread, you'll probably learn you didn't know it like you thought you knew it. So that's it. I found it to be true with myself many times over the years, and I just kind of wanted to bring that out. So best $12 I ever spent, sitting right here, The Player's Handbook by TSR. If you like what you saw, please like and subscribe, tell your friends, and I'll see you next time on page 121.